Hi guys, today's section is all about discussion on a case. First of all, let us go through the case. Next, we will interpret it. Then finally, let us conclude the answers for the questions respectively. Alright? Let us begin with the case. This case argues that SA is a 62-year-old man with mild left ventricular systolic dysfunction who has been receiving amiodarone for 100 mg daily as maintenance therapy for atrial fibrillation for 3 years. He presents to the clinic for his routine appointment with complaints of hand tremors and heat intolerance. The physical exam indicates that he has lost approximately 15 kg since his last appointment and has a moderately enlarged thyroid gland. SA was diagnosed with amiodarone-induced thyrotoxicosis and will be transitioned to drondarone therapy. Look at the past medication history or past medical history of the patient. Our patient is a known case of mild LVSD, that is left ventricular systolic dysfunction. So, SA have an ejection fraction of less than 40%. This explains the scale of the blood pumped out with each contraction is reduced. So, normally ejection fraction of 55 or higher is considered as normal, and when it is below 50 or lower it is considered as the ejection fraction is reduced. So the incidence of atrial fibrillation with LVSD is higher. Anyway, our patient was on tablet amiodarone for atrial fibrillation with a maintenance dose of 400 mg since last 3 years. Coming to the history of present illness. SA approached hospital for his routine checkup with complaints of hand tremors and heat intolerance. On physical examination, the physician found out that SA has lost 15 kg of his body weight. Here you can see unexplained weight loss. It can be a cause for concern. It might indicate an underlying condition. Remember, not all weight loss is serious. On further examination, SA is having moderately enlarged thyroid gland. Taking this all into consideration, that is, the signs and symptoms such as heat intolerance and hand tremors, as well as the loss of body weight and enlarged thyroid gland, the patient was diagnosed as amiodarone-induced thyrotoxicosis. Before going to the problem, let us look at the salient features of the drug amiodarone. So, amiodarone is approved for intravenous and oral use. So, it is used to treat serious ventricular arrhythmias, and it is also highly effective in treatment of supraventricular arrhythmias such as atrial fibrillation. So, it is having broad spectrum antiarrhythmic action. So, it is extensively used for a wide variety of arrhythmias. In this slide, you can see the structure of amiodarone. The structure itself depicts that there exist two iodine atoms in it. So you can see the iodine atoms in this structure. So on the coming slides you will get to know what is the importance of these iodines. Here we can compare the structure of amiodarone with thyroxine. Okay, so the structure of the amiodarone has some similarity to the structure of the thyroid hormone such as thyroxine. So you can see almost similar structure. So you can see the phenyl ring with oxygen and 2 iodine atoms, and similar methyl nitrogen rings. Okay. Why amiodarone was given to this patient? How it is beneficial for the patient? To comprehend that, let us see the mechanism of action of amiodarone. So, in this slide, a typical ventricular action potential is shown in this figure. So, here you can see the cardiac rhythm. So, here it shows the membrane potential, and you can see the phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4 in this figure. So let us see what are they. So in phase 0, this is the depolarization phase. So there you can see the rapid influx of sodium ions, and what is the result? The cell begins to contract. And coming to the first phase, there is a transient rapid efflux of potassium ions and the cell begins to repolarize. So before the cell was, or the membrane was at rest, and it was polarized, and because of the stimuli it got depolarized, and again at the phase 1 it begins to repolarize. So, as the repolarization begins, a slow influx of calcium ions then occurs, and this balances the potassium efflux and leads to the plateau stage. Okay. So, this is the phase 2 stage, and there you can see the maintenance of the contraction. So, followed by this, there is an increase in the potassium efflux. At the same time, calcium influx stops and repolarization occurs. So this is the phase 3. And coming to the last phase, phase 4. So as the repolarization occurs after the phase 3, the cell then relaxes and finally returns to the resting membrane potential. So that is regarded as the phase 4, and the ion pumps retains the balance of sodium and potassium to the baseline state. So the depolarization of one cell triggers the action potential of another cell, that is the adjacent cells. So this allows the electrical impulse to spread rapidly across the myocardium, so that in a healthy heart all of the cells contract at the same time in a coordinated fashion. Now let us see how amiodarone works, right? So amiodarone works in the phase 3. Okay, so amiodarone is a class 3 drug, class 3 antiarrhythmic drug. Okay, so this blocks the potassium channels in the cell membranes, so that it delays the repolarization and increases the action potential duration. Okay, so phase 3 was the stage of increase in the potassium efflux, right? So, and followed by that repolarization occurs. So what does amiodarone do? Amiodarone delays the repolarization by blocking the potassium channels and increases the action potential duration, so that atrial fibrillation increased in the rhythm is delayed. So amiodarone not only blocks the potassium channels, but it also blocks sodium channels, sodium channels, calcium channels, beta adrenoreceptors, and it is usually not possible to recognize its mechanism of action in a particular patient or dysarrhythmia. Going back to the case, our patient was diagnosed with AAT, right? That is amiodarone-induced thyrotoxicosis. The patient is treated with amiodarone for a cardiac arrhythmia may develop AIT. In contrast to other forms of hyperthyroidism, AIT is more frequent in males than in females. Our patient is also a male. AIT manifests with clinical signs indistinguishable from spontaneous hyperthyroidism. However, symptoms and signs of thyrotoxicosis are not apparent in all patients and may be obscured by an underlying cardiac condition. So, our amiodarone blocks the peripheral conversion of thyroxine, that is T4, to T3, that is triiodothyronine. So, also it is a potential source of large amount of inorganic iodine. So, there exists two iodine atoms in the structure of amiodarone. So, it is the potential source for the inorganic iodine. So, in this chart you can see there are two types of AIT. So, two types of AIT have been reported. First one is type 1 AIT, that is iodine induced. So, this one often occurs in patients with underlying thyroid disease. Example, multinodular goiter, Graves' disease. Okay, and whereas type 2, that is inflammatory thyroiditis, this occurs in patients without thyroid disease due to leakage of thyroid hormone into the circulation. So, we can manage the type 1 AIT with thioamides, okay, whereas type 2 can be managed with glucocorticoids. Since it is not always possible to differentiate between these two types, thioamides and glucocorticoids are often administered together to manage this condition. If possible, amiodarone should be discontinued. However, rapid improvement does not occur due to its long half-life. Now, let us solve this question. Let me dictate it first. What considerations should be made to determine how long amiodarone should be washed out before dronedarone is initiated? What should be monitored closely? The decision whether or not to wash out and the length of time to wash out a drug before switching to another similar drug depends upon the combination of pharmacokinetic and pharmacokinetic considerations, right? In general, it is accepted that after 5 half-lives, a drug is adequately eliminated from the body. Okay? So, after 5 half-lives, the drug is completely removed from our body. So, I am pretty sure that you all know well about half-life. Am I right? By definition, 50% of the drug, that is 50% of any given drug that follows linear first-order kinetics is eliminated from the body after 1 half-life. That means, so if the drug is 100%, by 1 half-life it is reduced to its half, that is 50%. Let us see after 5 half-life how much drug remains in the body. So consider the drug is 100%, then at the 0 half-life, above the arrow I am writing the half-life. At 0% at 0 half-life the drug remains the same, right? So after the first half-life, what happens? 50% of the drug reduces, right? So after the first half-life, 100% of the drug becomes 50%, and how much is eliminated? 50%, right? So below the arrow I am writing the eliminated amount of the drug. Okay, so now coming to the second elimination, half-life. For the second elimination half-life, what happens? Sorry, this is 50. So after first half-life we got 50% of the drug, right? So this 50% of the drug after second half-life becomes 25. That is half 50% of the 50% drug is 25. So how much is the total amount of the drug eliminated? 50 plus 25, how much? 75%, right? Now 25% of the drugs, 25% of the drug after the third half-life, how much it is? 12.5, right? Now how much amount of the drug eliminated from our body? 75 plus 12.5, 87.5% of the drug eliminated. Now coming to the fourth half-life, the remaining percentage is 12.5, right? So after fourth half-life, how much drug will be remained? 6.25, that is 50% of 12.5% drug. So the total amount of the drug eliminated becomes 93.75, right? Now coming to the last, this 6.25% of the drug after the fifth half-life, how much it becomes? 3.125. So the total amount of the drug that is eliminated from our body is 96.875. Hence, theoretically, 96.875% of a drug will be eliminated from the body after 5 half-lives. Hope you all understood. So, our drug amiodarone is lipophilic or hydrophilic? So our drug is highly lipophilic. So this drug accumulates in many tissues including heart, lungs, liver, skin, and even concentrated in our tears. So in heart we can see 10 to 50 times more concentrated than in plasma. So the concentration of the amiodarone in heart tissues is more than in the plasma. So amiodarone has a complex pharmacokinetic profile due to its extensive accumulation in tissues, right? So this corresponds to an unusually large volume of distribution. The half-life of the drug is influenced by its elimination, clearance, and volume of distribution. So this can be illustrated by this equation. T half is equal to Vd into 0.693 divided by CLE. Therefore, drugs that are highly distributed to tissues and have a large volume of distribution will generally have a long half-life. Okay. So generally our amiodarone is having approximately 3 to 10 days to become 50% of the initially administered drug. Okay. So for amiodarone the half-life can be up to 100 days. How much? 100 days. So this In this extreme case, it would require waiting 500 days. How many days? So normally it is 3 to 10 days, right? So it can be up to 100 days in our tissues, and in this extreme case we have to wait until 500 days, that means 1.4 years, to fully wash out the drug from the systemic circulation. This amount of washout time, that is 500 days, is clearly unrealistic, right? Therefore, pharmacokinetic principles do not provide a complete picture of the factors that need to be considered in switching a patient from amiodarone to dronedarone. Even though amiodarone is detectable in systemic circulation for a long period of time, it does not remain effective at arrhythmia suppression for this extended time interval. Therefore, consideration of pharmacodynamic parameters such as time of effectiveness is necessary to consider for drugs with long half-lives. Amiodarone remains effective at suppressing arrhythmias for several days after the discontinuation, but may lose effectiveness as soon as 3 to 5 days after the discontinuation. How many days after? After the discontinuation of 3 to 5 days. Therefore, the potential accentuating of amiodarone toxicity versus the risk of losing the effectiveness of arrhythmia suppression needs to be considered. In this case, amiodarone is being used to maintain the sinus rhythm, that is the normal heart rate in a patient with atrial fibrillation with the current toxicity of thyrotoxicosis. Right? Dronedarone, in theory, should not accentuate the thyrotoxicity of amiodarone because it lacks an iodine group and has a significantly decreased propensity to cause thyroid-related problems in clinical trials. So here you can see the structure of dronedarone and amiodarone. So this is the picture of dronedarone, and you can see it lacks iodine atoms. Furthermore, the administration of dronedarone or continued course of amiodarone therapy will not change the course of therapy to treat thyrotoxicosis. That is, we have to provide the treatment for thyrotoxicosis in addition to the transition to dronedarone, okay, such as methimazole, glucocorticoids, etc. However, by not administering one of these agents, it may decrease the effectiveness of the treatment. The most likely immediate concern related to toxicity of dronedarone and amiodarone would be associated with an excessive QT interval prolongation and increased risk of Torsades D points. So, what are the risk factors? QT interval prolongation as well as Torsades D points. This consideration is important because both drugs have similar mechanism related to ion channel function and Vogt-Williams classification. Therefore, pharmacodynamic monitoring of ECG data becomes important in patients switching from amiodarone to dronedarone. So, if a patient gives normal heart rate, corrected QT interval, if it is normal, and maintenance of normal sinus rhythm, then also associated with the absence of other amiodarone related adverse effects such as liver toxicity, skin toxicity, because it deposits in other tissues also, right? So it would be reasonable to begin dronedarone after 3 to 5 days washout in this patient, right? If that patient gives a normal QT interval and maintenance of normal sinus rhythm and absence of other amiodarone related adverse effects, then we can begin the Drondaron after 3 to 5 days washout in this patient. Is it clear? So when we are transitioning the therapy to the Drondaron, we have to closely monitor the QT interval because there is chance of QT interval prolongation, and we have to monitor that whether the patient is having normal sinus rhythm and normal QT interval, and we have to check for any other toxicity signs and symptoms. Okay, hope you all understood. Thank you.